Welcome into Vandy on SI. I'm Joey Dwyer. He's Graham Bacco. Somewhere in an alternate reality, Graham and I are in a hotel room in Athens right now, or maybe in Eugene, Oregon, and we're talking about how Vanderbilt's planning to use Eli Stowers to keep its season alive and make a run in the college football playoff for the first time in program history. Graham, that reality is not our current one, though. Vanderbilt,
Mhm.
I don't think would have drawn it up this way. But its season ends tomorrow either way in Tampa Bay. I'm heading there this afternoon. But I think they're still not taking this opportunity lightly. I think the last game for a lot of guys on this team, namely Diego Pavia, last time for this group to really put on a show. And I think it would be fitting for them to go out with a win in a lot of ways, the most successful team in program history already. Time to see if they can really add a cherry on top of to what they've done already, Graham.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing that sort of struck me the most, when the bowl game was announced and the fallout of the playoff bracket and all that was revealed and all that. And, Clark Lee held his press conference. What struck me most is how grateful that Clark Lee was to have this opportunity. He's like, you know what? Like, we love playing football. We're not gonna, bench anyone. We're not gonna have, a lot of people opt out or whatnot. We're not gonna give up or quit or anything like that. So, he's shown his gratitude. He's shown, how lucky that this team is to be in this position. And this team still has motivation, right? Because they're trying to get, win number 11, something that has never been done. Win number 10 was never done before. And now they're going to go for win number 11, which has never been done and could stand for a long time. We'll see what the future holds. But, 11 wins for a college football team, especially with a program like Vanderbilt, that's just something that it is very special to them. So, to say that they don't have motivation is just not really right. Because, obviously they're coming to win, they're coming to play, and I think it's going to be a great game to see, and I think it just also shows a culture, right, where you only have a guy like Eli Stowers who, understandably, right, opts out because he's going to be an NFL tight end in the near future. So, it just speaks to the culture where you only have like one star player opting out while the rest of the team plays. And you mentioned Diego Pavia, his final ride, his season finale in college, and so it's going to be special game, special to watch, and what a day to end 2025.
Yeah, Graham, a lot's going to change for this program after tomorrow, and a lot has
Hmm.
already changed, right? Like Eli Stowers is done, Jared Curtis is on campus, and presumably in some ways is already competing for the starting quarterback job, just with building
Hmm.
relationships and taking scout team reps, things along those lines. But for now, this is the 2025 team for one more day, and last time you'll ever see Diego Pavia in a Vanderbilt uniform. Richie Hoskins will be done, presumably. Langston Patterson will be done if the lawsuit doesn't go his way. A lot of guys who have really been stalwarts for this program and really have helped Clark Lee build this thing and have stuck with him through some poor times and have experienced some of Clark Lee's best moments as a head coach. Some of those guys are going to be at the end of the line here. And I think it'd be fitting for them to find a way to win their last game again, too. Maybe Jerry Kill is done after this. You don't know kind of what's on the other side of Wednesday afternoon. You don't know who's going to enter the portal. All we know is that the 2025 team will never be on the field again after this. And I think they've got a chance to end it on a good note. I would guess that this is a game that they can win. Iowa obviously has a few losses, but all of them within 10 points, almost beat Indiana actually, which,
And Oregon.
yeah, right. Those would have obviously altered the course of their season. They're a few plays away from being a playoff team in a lot of ways, but Graham, obviously not the case for either team at this point. And I think when you're in a bowl like this, both teams are going to have a path to the playoffs that, uh,
Hmm.
for one way or another, went haywire. Obviously, Vanderbilt's was their wins not aging all that well. Iowa's was being within a few plays of being a playoff team if they had those two wins on their resume. It's going to be a high level game tomorrow, and I don't know that it's going to be a pretty game or anything along those lines, kind of like some of the games Vanderbilt has had, but. I would expect Vanderbilt to be right there with Iowa. If it's not winning this game, I think it's a good matchup for Vanderbilt, but certainly going to be tested in a lot of ways. I know you've talked to a lot of guys about Iowa and have written a lot about Iowa. I'll swing it to you just for your general thoughts on the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, no, I mean this is a tough team, right? I mean Kirk Ferentz, longtime coach since I believe since 2001. And man, he has been a consistent coach that has built a consistently tough team in the Big Ten where it's like it's all about physicality and it's all about the run game and it's all about playing tough defense. And this team has continued to do that, right? I mean, you see against Indiana, they only allowed 20 points against Indiana. Oregon only put up 18, and they needed the last second field goal to get to 18 to beat Iowa. So, this team is no pushover. I mean, this is a really good team, really tough team, and you talk about the ReliaQuest Bowl. It's one of the best bowl games outside of the playoff bowls and the playoff bracket. So, this is still a high level bowl game. This is a bowl game where, Vanderbilt should be proud to say that they're playing in. And so, I'd probably, if I had to rank them, probably maybe second. I mean, outside the Pop-Tart Bowl, I mean, the ReliaQuest Bowl is certainly like up there, right?
Yeah,
So,
there's no toasters or Cuban Pop Tarts
unfortunately,
involved here,
man,
unfortunately.
that'd be so nice if they made the Pop-Tart Bowl playoff game. That'd
Right.
be,
Maybe
uh,
Michigan, Texas would be up there as well. But
oh,
I don't
yes,
know.
yeah,
With
a
the way
Citrus
those
Bowl. Yeah.
programs have changed too, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Oh, for sure. So, yeah, no, look, my early thoughts are this is going to be a tough game. Probably not, I would not expect a high scoring game, certainly. I don't expect to be like, how, is Vanderbilt Auburn going track meet 45-38. I certainly don't expect that. I certainly expect it to be sort of more so the Missouri game,
Mhm.
lower score and maybe first team to 20 wins the game, something like that. So, yeah, definitely a closer game, but, a game that no less Vanderbilt should be able to win and is certainly capable of doing so.
Yeah, right. We'll start with the offense more so. I think probably the storyline that I'm watching the most is how does Vanderbilt operate without Eli Stowers? And again, it's operated without huge games from Eli Stowers at points this year. I don't think that they're necessarily one-dimensional in that way, but I think more so I'm looking at Cole Spence and I'm like, here's a preview into what next year is going to be. We have confirmed Cole Spence did announce he was returning. Uh, I'm not one to believe a guy on the face just because of I asked Jason Edwards if he was coming back last year. He said yes, and then he was in the portal 2 days later, essentially. Um, but we have confirmed that Cole Spence does intend to return as long as everything gets sealed up the way that everyone expects it to. And we have confirmed as well, or at least we're going to speculate here that Cole Spence coming back means that he's going to have a feature role in the offense next year. And I think it maybe takes on a lot of the receiving that Eli Stowers left. I think Bryson Coleman, should he return, will also do a lot of that. I think he's a really talented receiver as well. So I don't think Spence is going to post Stowers like numbers next year necessarily, but I think just logically thinking, a lot of that role ends up with Cole Spence and some of it ends up with Bryson Coleman as well. But Graham, those are the two guys who Vanderbilt's going to trot out there tomorrow and let play tight end. I think
Mhm.
those are two guys that I really have my eye on. Is like, can Cole Spence have 5 receptions? I think that makes you
Mhm.
feel a lot better about what the offense looks like next year. Maybe does Bryson Coleman catch a touchdown or have a long reception or something along those lines? Is the blocking good on their end? I think Cole Spence, you don't have to worry about the blocking. Coleman, I think, still trying to prove himself as a blocker a little bit. That's a position where I'm really keyed in on tomorrow. Obviously, it's going to be a different offense next year, presumably with Jared Curtis as the quarterback, but I think that tells you something if one of them has a breakout game.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, but the thing is like you mentioned, Eli Stowers doesn't, hasn't like been, playing superstar level every single game. He hasn't put up big numbers every single game. I mean, I think back to the LSU game, right? I mean, Cole Spence, I think it was like 5 catches, 56 yards, and a touchdown. So, Cole Spence has proven that he's fully capable and more than capable, to, step into that leadership role at the tight end spot and be that tight end and sort of like a go-to guy in the pass catching games. So, I'm not particularly worried. I'm certainly intrigued by it, but I'm not particularly worried as to how the tight end position is going to play out because of the weapons that Vanderbilt has, and because Cole Spence, I think we all expect that we would all assume that he's going to have a much bigger role in the offense next year in the pass catching game. We have no doubts about his blocking ability. We know he can block, but and I think, like you said, this is a preview. This is a big opportunity for him to to do that and to step in that role and to show what he can bring to the team next year. And I'm not. Yes, I will certainly pay attention to it. I'm not particularly worried, honestly, about Spence in the tight end position because we know that when we have seen throughout the season, like at times he has shown the capability to catch the ball in critical times, right? And against the LSU defense, he was able to find holes in the LSU defense, which was presumably at that time one of the more tougher defenses in the SEC.
Mhm.
So Yeah, I'm not particularly worried, but I'm certainly intrigued. The one thing though is that, you know, against LSU, you had Stowers obviously on the field, so the LSU defense paid attention to him. But I think what Tim Beck has done a great job of is, I remember Cole Spence talking about after the game, is Tim Beck had done a great job of dressing up the plays to deceive the defense as if, the plays where Cole Spence was going out to catch the ball, it was as if they dressed it up where it's a running play, and maybe MK Young or another running back was going to run the ball. So I do think Tim Beck is probably going to draw up more of those types of plays where even if you don't have Eli Stowers, you can still deceive the defense in the sense that maybe you can fake the defense out and think that Vanderbilt's going to run the ball, but actually Cole Spence is going to go maybe a crossing route over the middle of the field and you find himself open. So I'm very intrigued, and I think this also speaks to the depth, and the depth I wouldn't say is necessarily going to be tested, but I think the depth of the offense is certainly going to be on display, rather than tested in the sense that, I just think that the amount of weapons Vanderbilt has had all season, like it hasn't been Stowers and everyone else. It's been
Mhm.
Trey Richardson. It's been, the running back game. It's been Pavia, of course. It's been Spence at times as well, and Junior Sherrill at times. So, you have all these weapons, which I think hopefully should be on display. I would expect tomorrow.
Definitely, Graham. Here's a thing to note about the Iowa defense. Even if Vanderbilt doesn't have an explosive offensive day, I don't think that really indicates
Hmm.
much about it other than it didn't have a particularly great offensive day. Let's run through some scores here. In Iowa's loss to Iowa State, it gave up 16 points. In its two bye games, it gave up 7 points each. Rutgers scored 28 against it. Indiana scored 20 against it, and they have the Heisman Trophy winner.
Hmm.
Wisconsin went scoreless. Penn State scored 24. Minnesota scored 3. Oregon went for 18 in a win. USC posted 26 in a win. Michigan State 17. Nebraska 16. There's some pretty good offenses mixed in
Hmm.
there, and Iowa just made them drag their feet in the mud all afternoon, essentially, in all those games. So I don't know that this is necessarily a game that there's a lot of potential for an Auburn type shootout here or an LSU type
Right.
shootout where we're thinking going into the week it's going to be one thing and it's not at the end. But I think we have a big enough sample size with Iowa to realize like every possession is going to count here. And I also think Vanderbilt's going to have to win this game more like it won a game last year, where it's controlling the clock and
Yeah.
it's avoiding making the big turnover and it's moving the ball on the ground, which again is going to be difficult against Iowa because I think Iowa's front is pretty talented and has had decent results throughout the year, if maybe understating it by saying decent at this point.
Hmm.
Graham, that's going to be something to watch too. Is like, can Vanderbilt avoid the big turnover? When it gets to the red zone, can it convert? When it gets to 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2, can it convert those plays? It's kind of like any key to the game last year for Vanderbilt football. That's really what I'm following at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, points are going to be at a premium. Possessions are going to be at a premium in this game. I mean, like you said, I mean, Iowa, and that's the thing with Kirk Ferentz. Like, this is your classic old school Iowa Big Ten defense. I mean, they're
Mhm.
tough, they're physical, and they're going to make you work for every yard and every first down and every point. So this isn't, going to be. We don't expect Vanderbilt to win this game like 28-24 or anything
Mhm.
like that. We expect like a 20-17, maybe a 17-14 kind of game, or 17-13, somewhere around there. So. I just think again it just speaks to what Kirk Ferentz has created over there in Iowa, and just what the culture he brings, and you mentioned controlling the clock. I think that is certainly it's going to have to happen almost. Not in the sense that because Iowa's offense is so explosive that you want to keep them off the field, but just because you don't know, with this Iowa defense, because also you have to remember special teams too, and I'm sure we'll talk a little more about that. But this Iowa special teams unit is not your average special teams unit. I mean, this is a really good special teams unit. So if you punt the ball, you might have to hold your breath. So
Mhm.
like, I think in that sense too is like you don't want to punt the ball to Iowa, much less like give the defense a turnover. So yeah, controlling the clock, taking care of the ball are going to be really huge in this game from the Vanderbilt offensive perspective. Um, you know, on the defensive side of things, I think Vanderbilt defensively. th this is a good matchup for him because it's going to be good on good. You have the Iowa rushing offense against the Vanderbilt rushing defense. Iowa, I believe, 43rd in college football. They average about 177 yards on the ground, and Vanderbilt, one of the best at run defenses. I believe they only average giving up 102 yards on the ground. So it's going to be a classic good on good battle. And I looked, in the Iowa passing stats. Do you realize that not once this year has Iowa passed for 200 yards? Not
Yeah, right.
once.
It's crazy, isn't
So
it?
the
And there's
most that they've
multiple
had,
games where they've been under 100 yards. Like
yeah,
Albany,
that
they
too.
threw for their starting quarterback threw for 44 yards.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I think the highest he's thrown is like 186 against Rutgers.
Mhm.
So it's not to say that they can't pass for 200 yards, but
How do you
it's
score
just
100? How do you score 37 points against Wisconsin with your starting quarterback throwing for 107 yards and your running back score going for or your starting running back going for 96 yards? That just it defies all logic there.
yeah, right. I mean, and they created three turnovers that game, and that was probably the difference in the game. So it goes back to taking care of the ball Vanderbilt offensively, but I digress. So so when you look at the Iowa passing offense, I believe it's bottom five in college football. So the point is if you stop the Iowa run game and you force them to pass the ball and you force them to become a one-dimensional passing team, I mean, and force them to beat you by passing the ball, that's going to be almost not impossible, but it's going to be extremely difficult for Iowa to beat Vanderbilt in that sense. So I think that's the biggest key. And I wrote a story on this yesterday, actually. So it's just about stopping the run. And Sidner knows that. Corday Sidner, defensive lineman, by the way. So he talked to the media earlier this week, and he actually played at Purdue for 3 seasons. So he's sort of familiar with the running game in the Iowa offense, right? Playing the Big Ten. So he sort of knows that he has a familiarity that he could possibly, maybe talk to his teammates about, talk to the coaching staff about, but we'll see. But I think run defense and penetration, getting, into the backfield defensively, into the Iowa backfield. And so those are the two big things I'll be looking for when Vanderbilt goes on defense.
Yeah, for sure. One more thing on the Vanderbilt offense, and this kind of ties in with the defense as well. I would say probably one of Iowa's more talented position groups is its defensive back room, its corners, and its safeties. I think it's going to be an interesting test for Diego Pavia and the Vanderbilt receivers in that way because I think if you're we talk a lot about the front seven when we think of Iowa and Big Ten football.
Mhm.
I think that's an interesting piece of this where maybe Iowa's not going to throw for that many yards, but they're going to make it difficult for you to do the same. The good news for Vanderbilt, Iowa, among the least explosive passing games in the country, like we've talked about. I think their quarterback is talented-ish,
Mhm.
but again, we've talked a lot about Vanderbilt's corners being tested against SEC receiver rooms and having to guard Cam Coleman, who's now in the transfer portal. No longer are they going to be tested in the pass game like they have been all year. I think this is more about can they come into the box and make an open field tackle, or can they get on the perimeter and make an open field tackle, something along those lines. I think that's probably the bigger deal for Vanderbilt's cornerback room. Here's the thing that I'm watching and I think has allowed Iowa to succeed without an explosive passing game. Graham, they've got the Joe Moore Award winners. And you generally thinking like if you're trying to build an offense without a even decent passing attack, you're going to be pretty hard pressed to do it. You just feel like Iowa has done it um, in like every way that you would have to do it, and I
Mhm.
think that's probably the encouraging thing. They force turnovers, they get good field position, and obviously, their offensive line is among the best in the country. I think their defensive line is pretty good too. But for now, just talk about the offensive line. Again, though, their receivers aren't all that talented. I don't think their tight ends are all that talented. I believe they lost the starting tight end early in the season. I'm still thinking like if Vanderbilt gives up more than 25 points, I'd be a little surprised here.
Yeah, I'd be stunned, honestly, if they give up 25 or more. And again, like this Vanderbilt defense, like they're a respectable defense. They've had their struggles at times, but in the end, like they've sort of been a bend don't break type of defense. So if Iowa scores 25 with essentially a non-existent passing game and just
Hmm.
simply running the ball, I would be floored, honestly. And so that's why I say, talking about the Joe Moore offensive line of Iowa, that's why I say defensive penetration is going to be so key. Because if you're able to get into the Iowa backfield against the Joe Moore award winners and stop the run game, uh, like how would Iowa win this game? I don't know. I mean, because you're gonna have to pass the ball at that point. So if you're able to get them into these 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 10s, these third and long scenarios, it's gonna be a huge advantage for Vanderbilt. I mean, and like you said, like it's not like they have superstar receivers on Iowa's offense. So if you're able to make them go the long distances on these downs, then and just get them off schedule, like it's going to be a huge win probability for Vanderbilt in that sense. So I just think, if you're able to sort of break apart the Joe Moore Award winners, and by the way, don't forget, Vanderbilt's offensive line was a Joe Moore Award semifinalist, I
Yeah,
believe.
and no opt-outs either, so they've got everybody good to go.
Yes, that too. So maybe they think they've got something to prove. I don't know. But so we got two great offensive lines going at it here. And I think, the defensive line that's going to get more penetration and more into the opponent's backfield is going to, certainly help themselves in terms a lot, by the end of the game.
Graham, this is going to be like a Big Ten football game in a lot of ways, right? We've
Hmm.
talked a lot about on the basketball side, Vanderbilt just not being able to be slowed down by a team. I think that I was good enough to be able to slow down Vanderbilt
Oh.
football in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
And Vanderbilt's going to have to win this game the big bad Big Ten way, I think, in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
Maybe it'll hit on an explosive or two here or there, but I think their secondary is pretty good. I think their defensive line's pretty good. Obviously, their linebacker room, I think, leaves a little bit to be desired, which could be helpful for a guy like Cole Spence, which I think even helps you more in this type of matchup. But man, this is going to be an ugly game in a lot of ways. It's going to be beautiful weather in an
Yeah.
NFL stadium.
Hmm.
Yet I don't know that this is going to be a classic bowl game in a lot of ways. Maybe it'll come down to the final drive. If any of Iowa's games indicate anything, then that'll probably be the case. But Graham, this is going to be ugly in a lot of ways, and I think people should probably be prepared for that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I would sort of encourage people to go back watch the Vanderbilt Missouri game to sort
Get
of
used
give
to it,
like a
yeah.
little, yeah, get like a little preview of what tomorrow could look like. I mean, you think about what that game was. I mean, it was two great defenses in that game just going at it, and especially when you had two offenses in that game where that had explosive players. I mean, Ahmad Hardy, Missouri running back, he's an explosive player, and then of course you have guys that can be explosive on the Vanderbilt offense. So both defenses got slowed down the offenses in that game. So I think we should probably expect something similar to that. I think tomorrow, and like you said, they're going to sort of have to beat Iowa, give them a little taste of their own medicine, and that win a Big Ten style game, which I think the Missouri game sort of indicates that Vanderbilt is more than capable of doing that. And I think Vanderbilt has certainly played against tough defensive fronts. You think about the Alabama defensive front, the Missouri defensive front that they played. Who else is it? Who else have they played? I mean, LSU's defensive front was pretty solid, at least at the time that they played. So
Mhm.
I just think, that the experience sort of helps, Vanderbilt here where they've played these physical teams up front. And I think that could help them. Iowa, of course, has too, and they'll certainly slow down Vanderbilt, I think. But I think, yeah, I just think whoever is able to maybe get off to a faster start offensively is probably going to win the game. And whoever possibly has, the more explosive players on their side of the field. Because I feel like if you're an explosive athlete, if you're an explosive player on the field, eventually you're going to make one break, right? So
Mhm.
remember in the Missouri game, you had MK Young. He finally exploded for that 80-yard touchdown run, and that was one of the biggest differences in the game. Aside from the CJ Hurd takeaway, you had the 80-yard touchdown run. So I think sort of whoever gets the more explosive plays, whoever gets the bigger plays, is probably going to win this game.
You're right. Graham, a couple notes on bowl prep. It's interesting the motto here has kind of been taken on like we had talked about earlier in the show, the one last climb thing.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty fitting here, and I'm sure every team in the country is thinking that way. But all things considered, Vanderbilt does have a pretty old team, and
Hmm.
there are a lot of guys who can return, have more eligibility somehow, some way. I think just kind of an indicator of what eligibility looks like these days. But there's a lot of guys who are old and a lot of guys who may not have a chance to go out there with this team again. Vanderbilt's trying to do it for those guys, cherishing its time with those guys for the final time, the final game of the Diego Pavia, Eli
Hmm.
Stowers era, the golden era of Vanderbilt football. We'll see if it can continue, but I think really it's just a day where you acknowledge what that core has done. It's a celebration of what that core group has done, and it's not just Diego Pavia, it's Chase Mitchell, it's Eli Stowers, it's all these guys that have poured so much into this and have really helped to kind of change the trajectory of this program. Colby Taylor, Corday Sidner, guys like that
Hmm.
who uh, have come in and have really given everything that this program could hope for throughout their time. I think an interesting way to send them out would be find a way to win a bowl game and allowing them to celebrate on the field after. Obviously, Vanderbilt's got to climb to do it, though. It's a difficult opponent. I don't think an opponent that much more difficult than what they faced. I think they're capable of beating
Hmm.
Iowa, but that's the motto here: one last climb. And you're looking, and if you're watching a bowl practice, you're kind of seeing the next era of Vanderbilt football.
Yep.
At least Vanderbilt would like to think so. On the field, Jared Curtis, I think, swapped jerseys with Diego Pavia
Yep.
yesterday. Was wearing number 2. Maybe a sign of things to come in the future. I would guess at this point next year, Jared Curtis is leading Vanderbilt into either a playoff or a bowl game in some way. So you're starting to get a glimpse at what it's going to look like beyond this week. But Graham, one final day for Diego Pavia, one final day for this Vanderbilt core to end out on a high note and to get the first or
Hmm.
to win an 11th game for the first time in program history. I think that's something we should note as well. You want to say they're the most successful team in program history? I think you'd be right to say that at this
Yep.
point. It's undisputable if you win 2 more games than any other team in program history has won, though. It's unbelievable to think that that's a possibility here and is
Hmm.
really on the table. Time for Vanderbilt to do it, though. One last ride, one last game with Diego Pavia in a Vanderbilt uniform, a guy that we'll think back on forever with this program, the most famous player to ever play for it, the most transformational player to ever play for this program, the most controversial. Uh, the era ends tomorrow, and Graham and I will have coverage of it post game. I think Dylan's going to get on the post game show as well. So we'll be fully loaded up. I'll be at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa for the Rely Quest Bowl. But for now, thank you guys for watching. God bless. We'll talk soon. Thank you guys for all the support on the football coverage throughout the year. We'll talk soon. Peace.